Hello, dear students. Welcome to today's class. So, in the last class, we had discussed about crystal lattices and unit cells. We have seen 14 Bravais lattices. Then we have seen different types of unit cells. Then 7 crystal systems, etc. Isn't it? So, today we'll discuss a new topic, that is number of atoms in a unit cell, and this topic is very important. You should know how to calculate the number of atoms in a unit cell. Okay, so we'll see what is it. Now you can see a image here, isn't it? So this is a crystal lattice, isn't it? You have already studied what is a crystal lattice. So what you can see, the image what you see, that is of crystal lattice. And you know that crystal lattice, it is made up of a large number of unit cells, isn't it? That is, unit cell is the smallest portion, and that unit cell, when it is repeated n number of times, you will get a crystal lattice, isn't it? And here you can see blue dots, which is called as the lattice points, and they are also called as constant particles, isn't it? Lattice points, they are occupied by, or they are uh, depicted as, they are called as constant particles, isn't it? So that can be either atom, molecule, or ions, isn't it? So for this number of atoms in a unit cell, we'll be focusing only on a unit cell. We don't need crystal lattice over here. We need only a unit cell. So my first question is, in the image which you can see, how many unit cells are present? Just take a moment, count, and just keep in your mind, or think how many unit cells are present in this crystal lattice. I hope you got the answer as 8. 8 is the answer because there are 8 unit cells present. I can say that is, this is the first one, this is second one, this third one, this is the fourth one. Okay, this 4 on the top part, and this is the fifth, this is the sixth, 7 and 8. So there are 8, you can see here there are 8 unit cells present in this crystal lattice. So we'll be focusing on only one unit cell, and we'll be counting the number of atoms in a unit cell for different unit cells. That is, for primitive unit cells, that is, we have studied unit cell, it is of two types, isn't it? Primitive unit cell and centered unit cell. So primitive unit cell, you know, it is present only at the corners, and then you have centered unit cell. That centered unit cell is again divided into 3 types, that is BCC, body centered unit cell, FCC, face centered unit cell, and N centered unit cell. So you don't have this N centered unit cell. So we'll be discussing primitive unit cells and centered unit cells. Primitive unit cells and centered unit cells, you have BCC and FCC. So 3 main unit cells we are going to discuss in this entire chapter, that is simple cube or primitive cubic unit cells, then body centered cubic unit cell, and face centered cubic unit cell. So these 3 we are going to discuss here. Okay, so here we'll be considering, I said already, will be considering only unit cells, and for our simplicity we can assume the constant particle as an atom. Okay, just for our simplicity, it can be atom, molecule, or ion, anything, but for our simplicity, let us take that constant particle as an atom. Okay, so the first one is primitive cubic unit cell. Okay, that is, you have unit cells of 2 types. If you have not watched that video, first you have to learn that classification, then only you will understand all these. Okay, so primitive cubic unit cell, just rewind, what is a primitive cubic unit cell? It is a unit cell where the atoms are present only at its corners, that is, constant particles are only present at its corners. Okay, you can see a orange color, that is constant particles, they are present only at its corners. Okay, So this is yet another image, that A image which you can see. A, it is of open structure. A is the open structure, and B, it depicts some space filling representation. That is, actual representation is what you can see in C. Okay, C is the actual representation. That is the actual portion of different atoms present in a cubic unit cell. Okay, so actually this A is called the what you can say, a unit cell. It is just a depiction, diagrammatic representation. B is how actually the atoms are close, and C is the actual representation. Okay, now we have to discuss the number of atoms in primitive cubic unit cell. Okay, now just consider this image. Okay, I am we are discussing only about one unit cell, isn't it? So now consider this crystal lattice. So you can see here this blue color, this is the atom, that is one atom. Okay, so that atom will be present at that corner, isn't it? Now just tell me, that atom is shared by how many unit cells? Okay, you can see here this atom, it is shared between this unit cell, this is one unit cell. Okay, then it is shared between this unit cell, this is this part, this is another unit cell. Okay, then it is shared between this unit cell, isn't it? This is another unit cell. You need little imagination for this, without which you can't understand. This is another unit cell. So I have drawn here 4 colors, that is 4 unit cells which is in the down part, isn't it? Similarly up also you have 4 unit cell, isn't it? That is why I asked you to count the number of unit cells before. So this is another unit cell, you can see here, this is another unit cell. Then this is another unit cell. Okay, then you can see here this part, this is another unit cell, and this is another, the other part, that is another unit cell. So total there are how many unit cells? 8 unit cells are there, isn't it? 8 unit cells are there. So this one atom that is in the blue color, it is shared between 8 unit cells. Just imagine that atom is in the center, and it is like shared between 8 unit cells are there, 4 on the top and 4 in the down, isn't it? So for one unit cell, how much portion of that atom will be getting? That is our question. Okay, because one atom, when it is in the center, it is being shared between 8 unit cells, isn't it? 4 on the top and 4 in the down. So for one unit cell, say for example this pink color unit cell, how much portion of that atom will that unit cell be getting? That is my question. So just take a moment and think how much portion of that unit cell will be getting. It is only 1/8 of the portion, isn't it? 1/8 of the portion will be getting for one unit cell. So if you consider this unit cell, I'm considering this unit cell, this is my unit cell which I am interested in. Okay, so this unit cell, if you consider that the first unit cell, okay, this part, this is one corner, isn't it? This is one corner. So from one corner it is getting 1/8 of the portion. So this is another corner, isn't it? So from this portion also, this side also, that is this side also, there will be unit cells. This side also there will be unit cell. Front, back, down, up, everywhere there will be unit cells, isn't it? This is not only 8 unit cells. It is like continuous. There will be many unit cells present, isn't it? So this side also there will be unit cells. So from this corner also it is getting 1/8 of the portion. This corner also it is getting 1/8 of the portion. This corner also it is getting 1/8. From this corner also 1/8. This corner also 1/8. So total, and this corner also. So total how many corners are there for a unit cell? So this corner is 1. This is 2. This is 3. This is 4. This is 5. This is 6. This is 7, and this is 8. So total there are 8 corners for a unit cell, isn't it? So from each corner it is getting only 1/8 of the portion, because it is being divided to other 8 unit cells, isn't it? So it is getting only 1/8 of the portion. So how will you write that? So how will you calculate that? So you have 8 corners, isn't it? So 8 corners into each corner, it is getting 1 by 8 of the atom, because it is being shared between 8 unit cells, isn't it? So from each corner you are getting 1 by 8 of the atom. So, and like that you have 8 corners. So 8 corners into 1 by 8 per corner atom, it will be equal to 8 into 1 by 8. So 8 into 1 by 8, you know it is 1. So from 8 corners altogether it is only 1 atom. Okay, so that atoms in each corner, if you take and if you join, you will get it as 1 atom. So that is for primitive cubic unit cell. Now the second one is body centered cubic unit cell. So we have discussed already primitive cubic unit cell. Now the next one is body centered cubic unit cell. Now quickly rewind, what is a body centered cubic unit cell? You know that body centered cubic unit cell, it has an atom at its, it has atoms at its corners, that is 8 corners. You can see here 8 corners plus 1 atom is at its center, body center, isn't it? So there are altogether, you can see 8 corners, there are atoms plus 1 at the center, or 1 in the center. So we are going to calculate how many atoms are present in this body centered cubic unit cell. So you can see here, this is the actual representation. A, you can see that is diagrammatically depicted. B is the open structure. So A is the open structure, B you can see that is space filling representation, and C is the actual representation, that is you can see the corners where you can see that atom, it is like cut, isn't it? Only 1 by 8 of the portion will be present at each corners. Okay, now we need to calculate this. So you know that we'll see how to calculate the body centered cubic unit cell. So here you have atoms present at the corner and at its body center, isn't it? So in the corners, as you have already calculated, there are 8 corners. So 8 corners into, from each corner you will have 1 by 8 of the atom. So 1 by 8 per corner atom, it will be equal to 8 into 1 by 8. You will get 1 atom as a whole. Okay, like that, one whole atom is present in the body center, isn't it? In the center. So one body center atom, that will be equal to 1 into 1, and that is again 1. So the total number of atoms per unit cell, per this body centered unit cell or BCC, it will be equal to 1 plus 1, that is 2 atoms. So altogether 2 atoms are present in a body centered cubic unit cell. For primitive cubic unit cell, it is only 1 atom. Now the last one is face-centered cubic unit cell. And rewind, what is a face-centered cubic unit cell? You know that face-centered cubic unit cell, it is having atoms at each corner, that is 8 corners, plus atoms are present at each face of the cube, isn't it? And altogether you know that there are 6 faces. If you have any confusion in this face-centered cubic unit cell, or if you have any doubt, just imagine your room, okay, whichever room whichever room you are, just imagine that as a unit cell. That room itself is a 3-dimensional, you can consider it as a unit cell. And you know that if you count the corners, there will be 8 corners. You can count 1 2 3 4, just count, there will be 8 corners. And for that room, count how many walls are there, how many faces are there, isn't it? There will be top and down 2 faces, then left and right and other 2 sides, opposite. There will be 4 faces plus top and down, 6 faces will be there, and each face there will be atoms. So that is the face-centered cubic unit cell. Now this representation is for the faces. Okay, now if you consider an atom in the face, okay, in a face, if there is an atom, it will be like cut into 2 pieces, isn't it? Because one atom in the face, it is just shared between only 2 unit cells. Other unit cells are not there, only 2 unit cells will be sharing an atom in the face. Or if you have any confusion here, just remember that in your room itself, the wall, take any wall, okay, and just imagine that you have kept an atom inside that wall. Okay, so in that wall, other side also there will be a room, isn't it? And this side also, which you are standing there, also one room, other side also one room. So that atom at its center, it has been shared between the other room and your room, two rooms, isn't it? So it is like cut into two pieces, isn't it? So at the faces, an atom, it is shared between only two unit cells. It is like only half. So one unit cell will be getting half of it, other unit cell will be getting half of it. That is 1 by 2. 1 by 2 is the portion. For corners, it is 1 by 8, because we have seen there are 8 unit cells which is sharing one atom. So one unit cell will get only 1 by 8 of the portion. So here for the faces, it is only 2 unit cells, so one unit cell will get 1 by 2 of the portion. To understand all these terms, you should be clear with the unit cell and crystal lattice, all those terms first. Okay, now if you have any doubts, you can ask me, that's also fine. So you can see here, this is the depiction. You can see faces, there are unit cell, and you can see the image C. You can see there at the corners, you can see it is like small portion, only 1 by 8 of the portion is present, isn't it? And on the faces, you can see it's like cut into half, made it into half, two portions. Okay, now we'll see how to calculate the number of atoms in a face-centered cubic unit cell. So here, as we have already calculated, there are 8 corners, and from each corner you will get 1 by 8 of an atom. So it is 8 corner atoms, or 8 corners into 1 by 8 per corner atom, and that is equal to 8 into 1 by 8, and that is equal to 1 atom. And here for face centered, as I have already said, one face, it is like divided into two parts, isn't it? So from one face, it is being shared between two unit cells. So like that, in a unit cell there are 6 faces. If you have any doubt, just consider your room. There are 6 walls, as you can see. So there are 6 faces. Into each face, it is getting 1 by 2 of the atom, that is half of that atom. So 1 by 2 per 1 by 2 atom per unit cell, that will be equal to 6 into 1 by 2, and that is equal to, that is like 6 by 2, so we'll get 3 atoms. So the total number of atoms per unit cell, that is per FCC, total number of atoms is 3 plus 1, that is 4 atoms. So in FCC there are 4 atoms, BCC there are 2 atoms, and the primitive cubic unit cell there is only 1 atom. And these three unit cells, it should be by hearted. You should know that primitive, that is simple cube or primitive cubic unit cell, it is having only 1 atom. BCC it is 2 atoms, and FCC it is 4 atoms.